She promised her late mother to never trust strangers until an incredible cowboy saved her life. The storm rolled in like a freight train, dark clouds swallowing the sun and drowning Lonesome Ridge in a sea of uncertainty. Clara Jenkins stared out of her clinic window as the first drops of rain splattered against the glass, each one sounding like the ticking of a clock, counting down the moments until chaos would reign. She gripped the countertop, knuckles white with tension. This evening felt charged, an electric current running through her veins that reminded her how fragile everything had become since her mother's passing. The promise she made, a vow cast in the fires of grief, was now a weight on her shoulders, suffocating her like the storm threatening to engulf everything she held dear. Inside her cramped clinic, the air was thick with a mix of antiseptic and the familiar scent of dog fur. Clara glanced at the pictures of her siblings plastered on the wall. Sam, barely 17 and already weighed down by life. Little Jenny, cheerful but oblivious to the turmoil around them. They depended on her, and it felt like an anchor in a stormy sea. But the realization hit her. That anchor was slowly slipping away. With no clients walking through her doors for weeks, the viability of her mother's decades-old practice hung by a thread as the rain pounded down harder. She turned back to the swirling darkness outside, doubting every choice that had led her to this moment. Her mother had taught her to never trust strangers, a lesson chiseled into her heart through years of loneliness and struggle. Each experience, a reminder that vulnerability could lead to ruin. Her instinct screamed for her to push away anyone who dared to offer help, to maintain her independence at all costs. But the floodwaters were rising, threatening to consume not only her business, but the future she yearned to carve out for her family. Before she could spiral deeper into fear, a sharp sound interrupted her thoughts. The unmistakable gallop of hooves against the ground. Clara stepped outside, panic prickling her skin as she squinted through the drenching rain. And there he was, Jake, the rugged cowboy from the ranch nearby, his silhouette framed against the darkening sky. A stranger, the very embodiment of everything she had sworn to resist. "Need a hand, Doc?" he called, voice steady despite the raging storm. Clara felt a paralyzing mix of hope and apprehension swell within her. Her instincts battled fiercely. The wall she had built pressed down like an iron weight even as the light of opportunity flickered in the distance. "Sure, if you're here to help my dog," she said sharply, battling the inner voice that warned her to turn away. She led him into the clinic, heart hammering. The reality of the situation engulfed her, her beloved dog Max, pinned under a fallen shelf. As Jake worked, Clara struggled against the walls of distrust that tightened endlessly around her. "Why would you want to help?" she asked, a challenge masked as curiosity barely escaping her lips. Unexpected warmth flickered within her as he answered with genuine concern, igniting a blush of possibility she had long buried but trembled at the thought of exploring. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark as all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." In the frantic hours that followed, Clara wrestled with mounting pressure as the storm battered the roof, drowning her clinic in chaos. Jake's presence became a persistent echo in her thoughts, teasing the edges of her guarded heart. With every ragged breath she took, the walls she had erected crumbled slightly, but the urgency remained. Without a thriving practice, she would lose everything: her independence, her family's prospects, and perhaps even her heart. As Clara grappled with her emotions, a brutal reality set in like a heavy fog. A call from her insurance company had unveiled dark truths and loopholes that could spell disaster. She felt the weight of despair close in, threatening to pull her under. Now, in the eye of the storm, with a man she barely knew holding out a lifeline, she was left trembling on the edge of a precipice. Should she take the risk and confront her fears, allowing trust to take root? Or should she retreat into the safety of self-reliance that had become a prison? Just then, a knock reverberated through the room, echoing like a death knell against her resolve. Clara's breath caught. Could it be more bad news? Or perhaps a betrayal that would shatter the fragile connection she had begun to forge? Staring at the door, she was left teetering between hope and despair, knowing that the answer would change everything. Clara hesitated, her mind racing as the steady drumming of the rain intensified outside. The fleeting moments before she opened the door felt almost surreal. The storm became a metaphor for her internal struggle. She stood at the crossroads. Should she open her heart to the possibility of help, or barricade her emotions behind fortified walls? Taking a deep breath, she reached for the handle, the coolness of the metal grounding her. But a sudden surge of anxiety gripped her. What if it was an unwelcome reminder of everything she had lost? What if it was more devastation knocking at her door? Her thoughts collided. Every instinct screamed at her to retreat, yet the door stood before her like a challenge. Finally, she pulled the door open, revealing a middle-aged woman in a drenched raincoat. "Clara, it's May. I heard about the storm and wanted to check on you." The concern in May's eyes struck an unfamiliar chord, one that tugged at Clara's buried yearning for connection. "Thanks, May," Clara replied, surprised by the warmth rooted in her unexpected gratitude. She blinked back the surprise, realizing this was what she craved, a simple act of kindness amidst chaos. "You're the first visitor I've had in days." May stepped inside, shaking off the rain like a dog emerging from water. "I tried calling, but you didn't answer. You need someone to look after you." The sincerity in May's voice mirrored Clara's growing desire for resilience, for support. "Everyone's depending on me," Clara admitted, feeling a lump form in her throat. "It feels like I'm losing everything, every day." Her vulnerability spilled over the carefully constructed dam of her emotions. "To lose everything means to be tested, Clara. You don't have to face this alone." May's voice was calm and steady. It made Clara want to shed the weight of her isolation. Clara pondered her friend's words. Perhaps her mother's lessons on trust were rooted in fear of betrayal more than an absolute truth. The iron walls she had built could not hold, and a part of her, desperate and hopeful, began to wonder if it was time to dismantle them brick by brick. Jake emerged from the back room, wiping his hands, clearly spending extra time on Max. "The pup will be okay," he said, flashing a reassuring smile that made Clara's heart flip. "Just some bruising, nothing serious." The rush of gratitude mingled with confusion. Here was the stranger she had initially resisted, stepping across the threshold, a stranger she had allowed to help. Clara's heart raced. Her immediate need to be self-sufficient felt absurd in comparison to the reality of assistance offered. But would accepting help cost her something intangible? Was it a slippery slope, allowing Jake in, even as he rekindled a flicker of her suppressed desire for connection? The familiar tug-of-war began within her mind as she clung to the remnants of independence. Jake and May exchanged a few words, and Clara noted the unspoken solidarity between them. What was it like to lean on others, she wondered, to trust that they wouldn't abandon her in the dark times? She had seen her mother's strength in solitude, yet here lay proof community offered strength too. With newfound resolve, Clara turned back to May. "You're right, I need help. It's just been so hard to accept." As the words fell from her lips, a weight lifted. Vulnerability was terrifying yet liberating. Jake stepped closer, his presence steadying. "You don't have to take on the world by yourself, Clara. Lonesome Ridge may be small, but what you have here is a lifeline. Don't shut it out." The edges of Clara's heart softened as barriers began to crack. "Maybe it's time for a little trust," she whispered, still grappling with the tremor of doubt that lingered. As the three of them huddled together, the storm outside roared, but within Clara bloomed a different kind of tempest, a storm of new possibilities. A burden shared, a commitment to embrace the unknown. The small seed of growth began to take root in her heart. Suddenly, a loud crash interrupted the moment. The lights flickered ominously as fear washed over her again. "What was that?" Clara exclaimed, a ripple of anxiety surging through her. Jake's expression turned serious, eyes narrowing as he scanned the clinic. "We need to make sure everything's okay." In that instant, Clara felt a blend of trepidation and resolve. This was it, the moment she could choose to face the storm head-on or to retreat once more. Either way, what loomed outside was just the beginning of a much greater challenge ahead. And as she prepared to step into the unknown, she couldn't shake the feeling that destiny was about to unravel in unexpected ways. what awaited them could change everything. In the wake of the crash, Clara's heart hammered in her chest. She exchanged glances with Jake and May, all thoughts of camaraderie and support overshadowed by the pressing threat just outside. The flickering lights cast eerie shadows, amplifying the tension in the small clinic. "What if it's an animal?" May suggested, her voice barely a whisper. The fear in her eyes suggested she felt helpless in the face of uncertainty. "Or something worse," Jake countered, his determination settling into a fierce resolve. "Let's check it out carefully. Clara, stay close to us." Clara nodded, adrenaline coursing through her veins. She had spent too long locked away within her emotional fortress, and now she could feel something different building inside her, an urge to confront rather than avoid. Drawing on that newfound courage, she took a step forward. In the clinic's dim light, the three of them made their way through the adjacent room where the crash had come from. Clara kept stealing glances at Jake, whose presence seemed to vibrate with steadiness. What pervaded her thoughts was not only the chaos of the situation, but also a subtle shift within herself. She realized she wanted to face challenges, to embrace uncertainty instead of cowering behind walls. They entered the back storage room, scanning for the source of the sound, but the space was empty. The rain beat harder against the windows, like an urgent reminder of the world outside, amplifying the storm both within and beyond. "Maybe it was just something falling," Clara murmured, though she felt the words hover in the air, weak and unsure. Each beat of silence was a challenge to her credibility, a test of her vulnerability. "Let's not take any chances." Jake paced the perimeter, his eyes darting around as if anticipating the next burst of chaos. "We need to secure the front and just wait it out. Grab whatever you can to barricade the doors." Something clicked within Clara. While desperation often ushered in paralysis, she knew this moment was pivotal. It could define how she molded her resolve moving forward. "I'll help," she stated emphatically, rising to embrace action instead of allowing fear to chain her. She sought to ground herself in purposeful motion, an instinct driving her to prove that she could contribute beyond mere acknowledgement of her struggles. Jake flashed her an appreciative look before nodding. As they moved, Clara felt the distinct clarity of tapping into her latent strengths, the ability to act, to follow through, to create change despite her internal storms. They worked efficiently, moving furniture against the doors, and Clara coordinated with a newfound sense of authority. With every piece that she shifted, she allowed herself to visualize not just a barrier from the outside world, but a protective shield around her vulnerabilities, an emblem of her strength. May mirrored her movements, and what felt like impending chaos transformed into synchronized effort. After securing the area, Clara broke momentarily to catch her breath. "What's the plan now?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. It was clear that this was no simple thunderstorm. Jake paused, his demeanor shifting from urgency to contemplative focus. "We stay alert and communicate. If there's danger, we'll figure it out together. Communication is key." As the storm raged outside, Clara realized the foundations of her previous isolation were crumbling. She began to understand the meaning of shared resolve, the belief that she could count on those around her in this moment of crisis. Yet, insecurity still nudged at her, whispering doubts about whether this newfound connection could endure. Just then, another loud noise erupted from somewhere beyond, shaking the clinic. Clara's heart sank. It was a call to arms, demanding she not only confront external turmoil, but also engage with her internal fears. The simple act of staying close to those willing to help her felt monumental, her promise to her mother resting heavily on her shoulders as she stood between past lessons and present realities. Driven by an intense urgency, Clara faced both her companions. "I am here to fight this. Whatever it is, we will tackle it together." Jake regarded her with pride, and despite the storm's wrath, Clara understood that the moment of truth wasn't solely lying in confronting the chaos outside. It would mean wrestling not just with external threats, but with her commitment to embrace uncertainty, to open herself to the strength of those willing to walk alongside her. As they braced for what lay ahead, Clara felt herself teetering between a defining leap and a familiar retreat. Whatever was coming, she was prepared to face it head-on. A choice was being forged in the very heart of chaos. Suddenly, another crash reverberated, this time sharper, echoing through her resolve. Something was on the move outside, and Clara's gut told her it was more than just environmental chaos. The next wave of challenges loomed, more significant and personal than ever imagined. Clara took a deep breath, ready to confront whatever fate had in store, steeling herself for the oncoming storm. The echo of the crash still reverberated in Clara's mind, but now it transformed into a catalyst, pushing her forward. Fear ignited a fire within her, igniting her instincts. She had promised to confront challenges and not shy away from adversity, so she stepped toward the door, heart racing, readying herself for whatever awaited beyond the threshold. "Clara, stay back," Jake urged, his voice sharp with concern. She halted, recognizing the protective streak in him. This was not just about the immediate threat anymore. It was about something deeper, about demonstrating her worth not only to him but to herself. "No, Jake, I can't just stand here. I need to be a part of this," she asserted, her voice resolute. The tremor of uncertainty rippled through her, but it was overshadowed by something stronger: determination. Jake's eyes met hers with a mixture of admiration and hesitation. Clara could sense he was still assessing her, but also recognizing the resolve in her stance. "Fine," he relented, though his expression shouted his concerns. "But if anything happens, I'll act," she interrupted, her heart thundering in her chest, feeling more alive yet more vulnerable than ever before. The three of them steeled themselves, Clara leading the way into the dimly lit corridor that connected the back storage room with the main clinic area. Each creak of the wooden floorboards felt like an exclamation mark in the otherwise quiet, anxious atmosphere. She became acutely aware of Jake and May's presence, a tangible reminder that they were not alone in their fears. This moment was not just about survival, it was a crucible, a test of who she was and who she could become. The storm raged outside, striking fear into the weak-hearted, but for Clara, it became a backdrop to her internal turmoil, a symphony of chaos complementing the uncertainty she had felt all her life. She had often been on the periphery, swallowed by her fears and insecurities, but now she was confronting everything head-on. As they approached the door to the main area, a howl of wind sent shudders through the building, and Clara's resolve faltered for a split second. She hesitated, overwhelmed by imaginings of a monster lurking just outside. But then she remembered the burgeoning strength inside her, linked intimately to her promise to her mother. Taking a deep breath, she placed her hand on the doorknob, steadying herself, ready to face whatever awaited them. Jake exchanged a glance with May, a momentary shared unease passing between them. Clara squeezed the doorknob tighter, feeling the cold metal bite into her palm, grounding her in the present. "On 3, she instructed, her voice a steely whisper. 1, 2... The door flew open, and they were met not with a monstrous shadow, but rather a cascade of rain, and the sight of a writhing figure, a man dressed in denim and leather, drenched but alive. Before any of them could react, he stumbled into the clinic, eyes wild with urgency. "Help!" he gasped, collapsing against the wall. In that moment, Clara felt the air shift around them, as if their lives had just collided with fate on a new trajectory. "Who are you?" Jake asked, stepping closer, ready to defend against any potential threat. "I'm just a guy who got caught out in that storm," the man wheezed, fumbling for his breath. "But I think something else is out there." There was an intensity in his eyes that sent a fresh wave of adrenaline surging through Clara. She felt a primal urge to trust him, an instinct that defied her mother's warning, but equally, it reminded her of how critical this moment was for her growth. Did she truly want to do this? To let someone new in? The choices at this crossroads mirrored all that she had grappled with before: trust and survival. "I can help," Clara said, the words tumbling out before she could second-guess herself. Here was a test, one that would define her evolution. This man might hold answers, or he could be another layer of chaos. "Are you sure about that?" Jake asked, skepticism lacing his tone. Clara looked at the stranger, sensing the electric tension in the room. "I'm sure of one thing," she stated decisively. "We can't face whatever's outside alone." The stakes had risen, and with them came a challenge deeper than any physical threat. Clara stood at the nexus of trust and self-discovery, teetering on the edge of her fears. Would she take the leap and embrace this fleeting chance of camaraderie, or would she retreat back into her shell? Before any answer could be reached, another crash reverberated from beyond, shifting the very ground beneath them. Clara's heart raced, alive with the knowledge that she had a choice in this chaos. And that choice? It was one she intended to fight for, no matter what came next. Clara felt the air in the room thicken, hanging like mist as she processed the man's urgent plea. Trust was a tenuous thread, frayed by past heartbreaks and maternal warnings, yet something within her stirred, urging her to take this leap. The stranger was disheveled and desperate, a reflection of her own internal chaos. Perhaps their paths had crossed for a reason more profound than mere circumstance. "We need to secure the door first," Jake interjected, breaking the spell cast by Clara's impulsive conviction. His protective instinct flared, asserting itself as the leader of their makeshift team. While she acknowledged his wisdom, Clara felt a stubborn flicker within her, a desire to take charge. Or we could ask him what he knows about the storm, about what's out there. May stepped forward, her expression revealing both fear and hope. He could be dangerous. We can't just dismiss caution. The tension among them swelled as Clara carefully weighed her options. This was the pivotal moment that demanded clarity and instinct, much like the moment she first decided to step through that door. "Listen," Clara addressed the man, measured yet assertive. "If you want our help, we need to know what you're running from. We can help you, but you have to trust us too." Her heart pounded, echoing the rhythm of her growing resolve. She was not merely asserting dominance, she was forging a connection based on mutual vulnerability. The stranger locked eyes with her, and for a moment, Clara sensed a shared understanding in their gazes, a silent recognition of the monsters, both external and internal, they battled. "I escaped something," he began, his voice trembling with a blend of fear and urgency. "A pack of ruthless men, they're after me for something I didn't do. I can't explain everything right now, but they aren't going to stop until they find me." With the harrowing nature of his revelation, dread washed over Clara like a cold wave. The outside world, once a mere backdrop to her former insecurities, was now filled with real, tangible threats. The weight of her promise to her mother, to always be cautious, pressed heavily on her. "Okay," she replied slowly, confronting her racing thoughts. "Then we have to make a plan. Let's barricade the doors, then decide our next move." She felt Jake's skepticism still shadowing their interaction, but she also sensed a shift in his willingness to consider her lead. Clara turned her focus on the task at hand, rerouting her escalating anxiety into actionable steps. Together, they moved to ensure the door was barricaded, a concrete way of fortifying their fragile alliance against the unknown. With each plank pushed against the door, she felt a surge of agency, a reclaiming of her narrative. They were not helpless, they were a unit. Once their fortifications were in place, Clara glanced over at the man, gauging his reaction amidst the tense atmosphere. "What's your name?" she asked, feeling an unsettling mix of curiosity and apprehension. "Caleb," he replied, half sheepish yet determined. "And I'm grateful. You're the only ones who've stopped to help me." The acknowledgement of agency, of having the power to choose how to act in a perilous situation, rippled like electricity between them. Clara took a step back, allowing the unfolding dynamics to settle in her mind. This wasn't just about Caleb. It was about confronting her own disabling fears. Each time she willed herself to trust another, she felt a piece of her old self dissolve, making space for a Clara who embraced uncertainty as part of her journey. Just as she opened her mouth to direct their next steps, a harsh knocking broke through the chaotic interplay of voices. Clara froze, heart thudding in the confines of her throat. The noise reverberated in her core, a chilling reminder that they were not as safe as they had convinced themselves. "Stay quiet," Jake whispered, tension reweaving their camaraderie into something akin to resolve. Their tightly knitted plans hovered uncertainly in the air, tangled with fear and the urge to survive. Clara felt the profound weight of her choices accumulating, amplifying the stakes. The confrontation looming at their door was both a legitimate threat and a catalyst for her journey, a chance to redefine who she truly was. This singular moment held the potential to unravel or knit the bonds between the group. The fragility of trust could either shatter or strengthen them. As everything teetered on the edge of collapse, Clara breathed deeply, steeling herself for the imminent choice that would challenge everything she believed about safety, vulnerability, and the power of connection. What lay beyond that door could alter her path forever. Then, in a twist of fate, the door cracked open just slightly, unleashing a gust of wind that threatened to tear their newly formed alliance apart. Clara prepared herself for whatever chaos hid beyond, grasping tightly to the resolve she'd unearthed within her. What awaited them on the other side was a confrontation that would demand more from her than she had ever given. Would she falter or rise? Only the unfolding chaos could reveal the answers that lay ahead. Clara's heart pounded in her chest as the door creaked open, making her acutely aware of the fragile nature of their newfound alliance. The gust of wind that swept into the room felt like a physical manifestation of her swirling emotions: fear, uncertainty, and an undeniable urgency to act. Just beyond the door, shadows danced ominously, punctuated by the sharp outlines of figures against the dim light filtering through. Clara's instincts screamed at her to retreat, to hide from the unknown threat lurking at their doorstep. Yet she stood her ground, resolved to face whatever came next. For the first time, she realized that strength wasn't merely about preparedness. It was about confronting fear head-on. Caleb shifted nervously beside her, and she caught a glimpse of vulnerability in his eyes. Their shared anxiety bridged an unspoken connection. They were both battling ghosts of their past, seeking redemption in the present moment. She shot him a quick, encouraging glance, silently conveying the message that they were in this together. "Ready?" Clara asked, even as her voice trembled slightly. It was less a question and more an assertion of her determination. They all held their breath, the weight of the moment pressing upon them like a heavy shroud. The door swung wider, and the figures outside were revealed. Two men, rugged and menacing, their faces partially obscured by shadows but unmistakably intent on one goal: finding Caleb. "This is your last chance, Caleb," one of them barked, his voice low and gravelly, echoing in the confines of the room. "You can't hide forever." Clara barely had time to process the threat before a surge of adrenaline propelled her into action. She wasn't merely a passive observer anymore. She was the leader attempting to orchestrate chaos into cohesion. "Move!" she shouted, pushing Jake toward the barricaded door as she positioned herself beside the window. She needed visibility. She needed to know what they were up against. "Clara, we can't," Jake began, but she cut him off. "We have to think. We can't let them in without a plan." Her words rang with a conviction that surprised even herself. The fears she had harbored for so long were being replaced with a fierce resolve that fueled her instincts. Peering through the narrow slat of the window, she saw a third figure lurking nearby, hidden in the shadows. Panic surged through her as she recognized the potential for a full-on assault. "Caleb!" she called out urgently. "What do they want? Why are they after you?" Caleb's face paled as he met her gaze, the weight of secrets constricting his throat. "I took something from them, a ledger that contains too much information. They think they can intimidate me into handing it over." Clara processed his words. The stakes had elevated dramatically. They weren't simply dealing with an angry mob. They were confronting individuals willing to do anything to reclaim their lost power. The very notion unsettled her, yet also ignited an unexpected spark of courage within. "Then we have to protect that information," Clara declared, her voice strong despite the tightening grip of fear around her heart. "We can't let them get their hands on it." The tension inside the room crackled as Clara rallied the group. Jake regarded her with an intensity that suggested both admiration and wariness. He was finally beginning to grasp the resolve she had tapped into, her commitment not just to survival, but to taking purposeful action. "Do you know where it is?" May asked, her voice a whisper, eyes wide with the realization that this was beyond their initial plans to simply survive the storm. This was about confronting malevolent forces head-on. Caleb hesitated, fear evident on his features. "Yes, but I can't access it without putting us all in danger." "You'd be putting us in danger no matter what," Clara replied, glancing back at the door as the men continued to pound against it, testing their resolve. "The only question left is how we can fight back. We can't let fear rule us, not anymore." In that moment, Clara understood that learning from vulnerability meant taking bold steps into uncertainty. Stepping forward, she took the reins of the unfolding plan. Determined, she looked to her companions. "We'll split up. One of us distracts them while the others create a path for Caleb, no matter what it takes." As Clara mapped out their next moves, she felt a growing sense of empowerment coursing through her veins. This was a pivotal moment, not just for Caleb, but also for her personal evolution. Yet, as she stood ready to face the storm, uncertainty loomed ever closer. The visceral fear of the unknown tightened within her, whispering reminders of hesitations from her past. Would she falter under the pressure, or rise to the challenge posed by an imminent confrontation with darkness? The answer unraveled before her as the door splintered at the edges, the men outside becoming shadows of the very threats they feared. Clara braced for impact, knowing that every decision from here on out would define not just their fates, but also the newfound courage she had begun to forge within herself. In that turbulent moment, as adrenaline surged, she realized that trust, however precarious, could turn into an unexpected ally in facing what lay ahead. Would she be able to confront not only their adversaries, but also her own fears? The battle was far from over, and she prepared to take that crucial leap. The splintering of the door drew Clara's focus sharply, morphing her resolve into something more concrete. With the storm of threats looming just outside, each heartbeat felt like the countdown to an inevitable clash. She glanced at Caleb, who was ghostly pale, and then at Jake and May, whose expressions mirrored her determination mixed with dread. Breathing deeply, she sensed the moment had arrived to transform her fear into a strategic weapon. "All right," Clara began, her voice steadier than she felt. "Jake, you take the back door. It leads out to the alley. It's our best chance for a distraction. May, you're with me at the window. If they see us, we can buy Caleb enough time to get to safety." Jake nodded, moving swiftly toward the back door, while May inched closer, her wide eyes betraying both anxiety and admiration for Clara's steadiness. The instinct to shield those she cared for overwhelmed her, binding each decision with urgency. "What if I fail?" The voice of doubt crept in, but Clara pushed it down, fueled instead by a mixture of love for her companions and a righteous anger against their pursuers. Caleb's secretive past felt like a heavier burden now, weighing on her gut as if it were a physical entity, a ledger. The hidden truths wrapped in its pages could become the linchpin in their survival. It was a secret worth protecting, but also one that demanded trust, a currency she had struggled to spend since her mother's lessons echoed in her mind. "How do we find out where it is?" Clara asked, her gaze piercing through the shadowy room. They needed information, but Caleb's fear seemed to paralyze him. I have an idea, but—" Caleb faltered, swallowing hard. "Just tell us," May urged, her voice shaking with adrenaline. "There's a safe in the floorboard beneath the old desk in my room, but going back is our only option," she interrupted, fierceness pressing against her words. "We have to move now, while they're distracted." Just as she concluded, the door shifted violently, the rugged silhouette stretching further into their space. Clara felt a rush of adrenaline at the sight, but it only sharpened her awareness. "Go!" she commanded. "Move before they breach. We're out of time." Jake dashed to the back door as Clara pushed May ahead of her and darted towards the window. A corner of the room darkened as the door buckled, the imminent danger breaking physical and psychological barriers. Clara positioned herself by the window, prepared to execute the strategy they had crafted. She would face the enemy with confusion and chaos, giving Caleb that precious time to access the ledger. Her breath quickened as she thought of the choices ahead. "Now!" she yelled, throwing open the window and creating a rattling noise that turned the men's attention their way. Clara waved her arms, defying fear and embracing the role of the distractor. "Over here!" In that moment, all the lessons her mother had imparted flickered before her, a potent reminder of resilience and the need to push through trepidation. Clara could feel the weight of those whispered words, intertwining with her intent, suffusing her with strength. The men shifted their focus, heads whipping in her direction, growls interlaced with fury burning in their eyes. This was it, the moment that would test not just her commitment to Caleb, but the core of who she was becoming. "Now move!" she hollered again at Caleb, their collective fates hanging on the precipice of this impulsive decision. As she clutched the window frame, Clara could almost taste the danger. Yet beneath that raw edge lay the adrenaline of empowerment, a new layer of her identity forged in the fire of peril. She had taken a step that transcended survival. She had chosen to act. But as she caught a glimpse of Caleb racing back into the room, her focus sharpened. His expression, a striking blend of gratitude and haunting shadows from his past, flipped an internal switch. If they succeeded, how might this new alliance redefine their futures beyond the current chaos? With the room vibrating under the voices of men outside, and the fear-loving adrenaline pushing her forward, Clara had to confront a new reality. A world where distrust could transform into something stronger, as long as they survived this night. Would they obtain the ledger? And once they did, what consequences would follow? The intricacies of trust hovered ominously over Clara as she braced for the fight that lay ahead, knowing that triumph or failure would carve their destinies. Clara felt the blood pound in her ears, each thud a reminder of the choices she had made, not only for herself, but for those she had vowed to protect. The chaos outside intensified, shadows shifting ominously as the men screamed threats, their fury a tangible force echoing through the air. Caleb rushed back, a mixture of desperation and determination etched across his face. Clara's heart raced. She had taken control, but would it be enough? "Did you get it?" she shouted over the cacophony, her eyes scanning the tight spaces for any sign of danger lurking within. Caleb shook his head, forehead glistening with sweat. "I couldn't. They're right outside. We have to find another way." His voice trembled, a mix of fear and regret. "Then we make our own way," Clara responded, her confidence molding into clarity. In that fleeting moment, she realized just how quickly her fears had transformed into palpable galvanizing energy, a fierce resolve she had not known she possessed before this crisis. "May, watch the door," she instructed, her tone shifting to tactical control. The rhythm of the situation hummed around them, and she needed to harness it. "Caleb, lead us. You know your house better than they do. Show us the safest route." He hesitated, the weight of their predicament hanging in the air. Clara pressed on. "They can't have all exits covered. We can't just stand here and wait." Caleb swallowed hard, nodding slowly. "Okay, follow me." He slid back toward a narrow hall leading from the living room, the rest of the group trailing closely behind. Clara's instincts kicked in. Every muscle was attuned to potential threats, every sound amplified to a near painful clarity. As they navigated the winding corridor, Clara's heart raced not solely from fear, but from an emerging realization. She was not merely a protector. She was a leader finding her voice amidst chaos. Each decision she made bore weight, not just for survival, but for the trust being forged between them. They reached a small side door, its peeling paint betraying the age of the house. Caleb halted, glancing back at Clara with an intensity that spoke volumes. He was trusting her, and she couldn't falter now. "Clara, they'll be looking for escape routes. We need to think strategically," he warned, breathing heavily. "I know," she replied, voice steady. "Whatever else happens, I won't let us fall apart. We will get out of this." The door creaked open, and Clara's stomach twisted as she stepped through, the dim light revealing a cramped basement filled with old boxes and cobwebs. She sensed the weight of each decision folding into the next, yet there was also clarity emerging behind the turmoil. Caleb began to rummage through boxes, searching for what seemed like valuable supplies. Clara watched him, noting his hidden determination transforming his fear. It dawned on her that she wasn't the only one evolving under pressure. Caleb was growing too. The two of them, once strangers shackled by secrecy and doubt, were now allies carved through shared adversity. "Clara," he said, nudging a heavy box aside, revealing a small metal case. This could be it, the ledger. Her heart skipped. Pulling this mystery into the open could be the very key to their escape, but what it might unlock was equally daunting. Would the contents bring them closer together or shatter the tenuous trust they were building? As Caleb wrestled with the case, the basement door suddenly rattled under a forceful shove from outside. Fear gripped Clara momentarily. "We need to hurry," she urged, adrenaline sparking her words into action. As the door held for the moment, Clara's thoughts raced. What if all that lay within that ledger was more perilous than anticipated? What if the truth was darker than any of them could foresee? "Get it open!" she yelled, panic clawing at her voice. Their collective anxiety swelled as the door splintered with each resounding crash, and Clara felt the urgency of not just preservation but survival. In this moment, facing uncertainty with her newfound bravery, she pondered the lessons she did not know lay ahead. At the core of their struggle might be a chance to redefine who they all would become. With a crumbling facade around them, and impending chaos cascading into the musty air, Clara knew their survival hinged not merely on the ledger, but on the fragile strands of trust they were weaving. But as Caleb finally pried open the case, a distant voice echoed in her head, the haunting realization that whatever lay within could challenge every foundation of the alliances they were forging. What awaited them? And would these revelations strengthen their bond or ultimately threaten it? The nail-biting tension climbed as they huddled close, hearts pounding in unison, ready to uncover secrets that would define their paths in unimaginable ways. As the metal case clicked open, Clara's breath caught in her throat. The sensation was electric, a surge of anticipation mingled with fear gnawing at her resolve. The contents were obscured by shadows, but the air thickened with unspoken danger, tightening around her like a vice. Caleb, his fingertips twitching as if startled by the weight of revelation, hesitated before lifting the lid fully. Clara leaned closer, peering into the depths of the case. Inside lay a stack of yellowed papers, some bearing official-looking stamps, others scrawled in hasty ink. The ledger was an unassuming relic, yet it pulsated with the potential to unravel everything. "What is all this?" Clara whispered, her heart racing faster as the implications began to crystallize. Caleb pulled out the first sheet, squinting at the faded text. The sight of his brow furrowing deepened her anxiety. "It looks like financial records, transactions, names." His voice faltered. "Clara, if these involve the people chasing us, then we need to understand it. We can't let fear dictate our actions," she asserted, cutting through the tension with a newfound authority. Each moment seeped into her soul like ink, marking her with both a burden and a purpose. The urgency was palpable. Caleb nodded, the spark of determination igniting in his eyes once more. Clara recognized that flicker. It was the same resolve blooming within her. "If we decipher this," she continued, "we can use it to our advantage. Knowledge is power." Suddenly the door buckled with a louder crack, reverberating through the musty basement as Clara's pulse quickened. The hinges screamed with each assault, and panic threatened to spiral out of control. "Focus," she instructed, steadying her breath. "We'll take turns reading this while keeping an ear out for them. Stay alert." The gravity of her words anchored the moment, forcing their fears into manageable territory. Caleb took a deep breath before diving into the first document, his eyes scanning meticulously. Clara's mind raced, echoing the urgency in her chest. Every second counted. She glanced at May, who shifted uneasily as her gaze flickered to the door. Clara reached out, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "We'll get through this," Clara said, letting the reassurance seep into her words. With renewed focus, Clara sifted through the papers Caleb handed her. Cryptic names and strange numbers danced before her, but the more she read, the more she began to understand their potential leverage. Various codes indicated hidden shipments, blood money of a sort that tainted the lives of innocents. "Look at this!" Caleb exclaimed, inching closer with keen excitement. "It mentions a delivery tomorrow night to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts. If we can expose this..." The door splintered again, raining debris that sent their adrenaline surging. The sound of heavy boots outside pressed upon them, a haunting reminder of how close danger loomed. "Clara, we have to finish going through this. We need to know what we're working with," Caleb urged, his voice a frantic whisper. Biting her lip, she nodded, tunnel vision narrowing her focus on the ledger. These papers could plunge them into a hell they had yet to fathom, or they could be the key to turning the tide. Each sentence was a grapple with the possibility of hope. Browsing through chaotic information, Clara felt a sharp pang of moral responsibility. What would exposing the truth mean for the lives of others entangled in this web? Questions collided within her mind, honed by the realization of potential consequences. The immediate instinct to survive warred with her understanding of ethical obligation. She had to carefully consider her next moves. Then, the faint sound of voices drifted through the door, sending icy chills down her spine. "We need to hurry," Clara whispered, urgency steeping her voice. "They're not far off." As Caleb continued to read, Clara's eyes darted to the door, once inanimate and now a harbinger of impending threat. The ledger was more than just pages. It was a code to crack, a formula for survival, and maybe, just maybe, an instrument of redemption. "Get ready. We need to make a decision," she said, drawing a deep breath to steady her resolve. The door groaned ominously under another violent push, and cocooned in dread, Clara realized the moment of reckoning was nearing. The choice ahead would not only test their alliance, but also shape who they were becoming. Yet, as she prepared to grasp the tangible tether of action, a step further into the unknown, a vivid thought ignited within her. Perhaps trusting Caleb, however instinctually instinctive, could lead them both to untapped depths of courage. What they would face next was an inescapable confrontation, an intersection of fate and fortitude that awaited them just beyond splintered wood. Would the truths within the ledger unite them as allies or morph their fragile trust into ashes? The splintering of the door sent jolts of adrenaline coursing through Clara. The moment had arrived, the confrontation she had both anticipatorily feared and longed for. The shattered wood reflected the disarray within her. Trust and uncertainty warred in her mind, yet she had a flickering flame of determination guiding her through. "Keep reading, Caleb," she urged, her voice a blend of urgency and steadiness. "We need to fully understand what we're up against." They had come too far, and the ledger within the case, more than a mere collection of papers, represented a lifeline, the sum of their choices. Caleb clutched the documents tightly, his eyes darting between the sheets as he deciphered complex codes and names that turned from obscured text into revelations. Clara leaned close, intrigued but on edge, ready to spring into action. As Caleb translated the grim notes, the impending threat outside stirred unease in the pit of her stomach. "Here," Caleb exclaimed, breaking through Clara's rising anxiety. "This will pinpoint their operations. If we expose this, we can dismantle their network. This isn't just about survival anymore. It's about changing the course of the danger." His fervor ignited a spark of courage within Clara, transforming fear into a collective mission. At that moment, Jane's voice cut through the air. "They're coming! We need to act now." Clara barely heard her. Her focus was on the weight of Caleb's words. She recognized the call to not merely escape, but to become an active participant in their fate. For too long, she had confined herself to the role of the caretaker, shadowed by grief and distrust. But standing here, face to face with uncertainty, she understood the choice lay not just in self-preservation, but in embracing the strength of community. "Caleb, can you keep the documents secure while we create a diversion?" Clara asserted, setting her resolve. "I'll stay at the window with May and hold them off just a little longer. We cannot let them seize this moment." "But you could get hurt." Caleb's concern was palpable, mingling alarm with trust. "I won't be alone," Clara replied, eyes locking onto May's. "We'll adapt. We have to summon every ounce of courage we possess for this fight. It's how we survive together." The words felt like a declaration. With each syllable she solidified their collective forging of trust. As the door met another forceful crash, Clara positioned herself at the window, adrenaline amplifying her senses. She could feel the pulse of Jaime and Caleb's breaths behind her, united by an unspoken vow to face this challenge head-on. With desperation clawing outside and clarity emerging within, Clara squeezed the window frame, hoping her voice would drown out the noise. "Hey, over here," she called, unleashing a calculated defiance. "You think you can intimidate us? You'll find that we won't back down." The figures outside paused, startled by her unexpected bravery. For the first time, Clara glimpsed the hint of an opening in the chaos, an opportunity in the midst of strife. "Clara, come back!" Jake's voice echoed from the shadows, ushering a swell of protectiveness within her. She almost hesitated, but doubt dissolved in the face of resolve. She was no longer the woman who shied from trust. She was a woman standing firm, striving for change through connection. As she exchanged fleeting glances with Caleb, who now stood resolutely holding the ledger, she felt a surge of solidarity. They would not allow fear to dictate their narrative any longer. The strangers outside regained their bearings, voices low and menacing. While Clara braced herself, she felt an unshakable certainty settle in. This was her moment to conquer fear, not just as a means of survival, but as a path to transformation. Suddenly, a loud crash erupted, and the door splintered further, threatening to cave in. Clara's heart raced. This was the moment of truth, the edge of chaos that could either fracture their alliance or forge it anew. "I'll create the distraction, and you get ready to move," Clara commanded, knowing that their success depended on unity forged through trust. She turned back to the window, arms raised, ready to face whatever chaos waited beyond. "We're not afraid. You'll find us ready for whatever you throw at us." Chaos erupted as she threw open the window wider, movement igniting the air around them. In that heartbeat, everything changed. The storm outside and inside became one, thrumming with anticipation. The fight had not merely begun, it surged from a place of authenticity and collective determination, charged with a newfound strength born of vulnerability and community. As the door buckled one final time and the figures beyond sprung into action, Clara and her companions met the impending storm with solid confidence, fortified by shared purpose. Together, they intertwined their fates, each of them ready to grasp their destiny, not as isolated souls, but as allies committed to trust and the pursuit of transformation. In that sphere of vulnerability, shadows transformed into bonds that would allow them to transcend fear, rewrite their stories, and redefine what it truly meant to overcome adversity. And from that moment, as they stood united against the chaos, Clara understood. The path to trust was not merely an individual journey. It blossomed only when embraced as a collective promise to face the storms side by side. This was Clara's evolution. She was no longer anchored in solitude, but buoyed by the strength she had nurtured within and the connections she had cherished, her heart alive with possibilities and the belief that whatever lay ahead could be faced with courage and unwavering trust. As the door finally gave way, reality collided with fortitude, and Clara leapt forward, ready to write the next chapter of her life and the lives of those around her. In that moment, empowered by the relentless spirit of connection and courage, she was prepared to conquer new horizons. Thus, Clara forged ahead. Now, it's your turn to ignite your journey through transformation. Subscribe immediately to our channel to not miss inspiring stories that motivate your personal growth. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to make sure these compelling narratives reach others who need encouragement. Comment below with your thoughts on Clara's evolution, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. Let's inspire change together.